Welcome everybody to Welcome Change. This is Ashoka's weekly conversation with social entrepreneurs about what works, what's next, what role we can all play as change makers in supporting these efforts. My name is Simon Stump. I'm part of the Ashoka global team, and I'm here today with Armin Salik, and we're really excited to jump into a really exciting conversation. Before we do that, just a quick note. We're here for 30 minutes or so this morning, afternoon, evening, wherever this lands on your calendar. And we'll try to save some time at the end for questions. So if, as Armin and I are speaking, you have something that you want to ask or hear him address, put that in the Q&A and we'll do our best to get to those before we wrap. I think that's it. Armin, good to see you.
Good to see you and good to hear from everybody from this Q&A.
Awesome. Yeah, it's been... I think the last time we connected was June. You are working on an academic cycle. So how are you? What are you up to today? Where in the world are you? And where are you physically, but where's your brain? What are, maybe what are the things you need to say to get settled into this conversation we're about to have?
So I am in Austin, Texas, and November is one of the best months of our year because this is the time where we're going around Texas and meeting with aspiring first-gen lawyers. And the past few weeks, we've been in Austin for the district mock trial finals, meeting students from Austin and San Antonio and South Texas who are trying to be lawyers. Last week, we were in Houston for the NAACP Youth Council event, which was just the ultimate pep rally for our work. And next week, we're going to San Antonio. So we're just all around Texas trying to connect with aspiring first-gen lawyers that we can support.
Awesome. Okay, we're gonna have to do some backing up to understand who are first-gen lawyers, where do they fit. I'm also just noticing your hashtag includes your name and something else. Can you say what else you're thinking about or what we're bringing to the conversation in that?
Yeah, so right now it's a really important moment in Iran. There is a revolution happening and there are people who are fighting for their right to religious freedom, to political freedom, gender freedom. And the name that you're seeing is Gina Mahsa Amini, who was an Iranian woman whose death as a 22-year-old sparked the current revolution, but it's been a constant battle for, individual liberties. And that is actually a combination of her Kurdish name and her Persianic, I think is what we call it, name. So she's really been kind of the face of the movement. And for the folks watching, just make sure you take a look at that hashtag, look it up on Twitter, look it up on whatever social media you're using, and hopefully like, share, repost, and bring some attention to that movement because there's some people working very hard for their freedoms back home.
Armin, beautiful. We're already understanding that you have a high capacity to do a lot of things at once. You have a big heart and you're really bright. So but I said we're going to back up and hear about first-gen lawyers. Could you back up even a little bit further? Because the connection to Iran is maybe also worth noting. So all the way back, young Armin, help us understand, where you are in the world, and then we'll zip ahead to some of the work in these systems that you're tackling these days.
Definitely. So I'll make a quick connection between how I think about, being from Iran and moving here at the age of 5. And the reason I was able to immigrate into this country is because of my parents' engineering degrees. So I always think about, where would I be if I didn't have access to the opportunities that my parents were able to grant me? And that kind of shapes how I think about, generational wealth, generational opportunity, generational access to things like immigrating to the United States or having access to opportunities to become a lawyer, to become an advocate for your community. And I think those two things are really connected in my mind. It's kind of the idea of, did I deserve or earn it? And, what was it that got me here? What would have happened if I didn't have those opportunities? And then what does that look like here in terms of who we provide access to, who we're supporting here? So I think that's the connection that I would make.
Beautiful. And you did become a lawyer, is that right?
I did. So I became a lawyer in 2016. I originally went to law school to become a criminal defense attorney. And then coming from a family of immigrants and just being a part of that process through my whole life, we're constantly having relatives going through that movement from immigrant to green card holder to citizen. And I connected with that and I became basically a full-time immigration law student. But through that process, I actually had a chance to teach law at a local high school in Houston. And I fell in love with teaching. And I fell in love with all these students who were trying to become attorneys, but I was worried that I was selling them on an idea without providing them the long-term support to actually accomplish those goals.
Right. And so this is where, when we understand your work, it's at the intersection of not just the legal profession, but also education, and maybe help us paint a picture of what we're dealing with in the legal profession and what we're dealing with in education. Like, what's the lay of the land? What are the challenges and opportunities in each of those areas? And then we'll get to how they connect.
Definitely. So when we're talking about the legal profession, we're talking about one of the most important roles, not just when it comes to the courtroom, but when it comes to politics, when it comes to advocating for your community, becoming a local leader. Law is a very serious pathway into those opportunities. But when we look at who has access to becoming a lawyer, we are looking at the least diverse profession in America. And we're looking at a profession that has a lot of financial barriers and institutional barriers to access. So what we're doing is that we are failing to support people at the points where they're being filtered out in high school, in early college. And then the most robust diversity efforts that we have in the legal profession are those that are investing in second or third year law students. But the problem is that the students that we're working with, the students that we're trying to support, are being filtered out long before then. So let's say your firm, Smith and Jones, and I'm sure there's a Smith and Jones out there. This isn't about them, but Smith and Jones is incentivized to actually wait to see who is left after being filtered out, so that they can increase the number of attorneys of color in their firm. So after all the filters have already been processed, after a lot of people have been left behind, how can I get the folks who have made it all the way through into my firm so that we can show that we're supporting diversity? The problem is that instead of increasing access, that's actually just shifting lawyers to different firms. And what we're trying to do is invest earlier in the folks that are being filtered out, who have incredible brilliance and passion for the legal profession.
Beautiful. And maybe we'll just make it really clear. You're working with high school students then, like that's, and maybe there's some exposure and awareness with even younger folks, but jumping all the way to before folks have even gotten into college, much less a law school in the US. And so how did you alluded to it a little bit, that you had some teaching experience, but I love this part of your story that you got your teaching certificate and the results of your bar exam in the same week, right? But that seems like a very, I bet a lot of your classmates who sat for the same bar exam didn't also prepare themselves to be teachers. So what was happening there? Like, how did you arrive at the decision to teach with that new law degree, and in a high school, right, of all places, and just kind of take us back to that moment?
So it really was a street law program at the University of Houston Law Center. And there are street law programs across the country at different law schools. I wish it was at every law school, but it was just this amazing opportunity where myself and a group of other law students had the chance to be taught how to go to a high school and teach them about criminal and constitutional law. And just that experience was so powerful. And I always thought about becoming a teacher. I just never thought I had it in me. Like I just thought, I don't have the personality to be, the Bill Nye of law or anything like that, which I don't have the opportunity to connect with students in the same way. That can't be me. I'm not that cool. But when I was able to go in the classroom, I absolutely fell in love with it. And the students were phenomenal. And I ended up learning a lot from them about the legal process, especially when we were talking about family law. And they talked about their own personal experiences. And they were talking about how they wanted to take that next step to advocate for people who are in the same positions that they were in. And that was a really powerful piece. The folks that we were leaving behind and these students that we weren't supporting enough long-term were the ones that were directly impacted. So I know there's a big word that we talk about in social entrepreneurship right now, which is positionality. And the folks that are closest to the issues that we want to address with our legal system are the same ones that are frequently filtered out and left without a voice in legal setting. So that process of just going through that, falling in love with teaching and just meeting those amazing students at the High School for Law and Justice in Houston. If it wasn't for them, I probably wouldn't have pursued education. I ended up getting certified as a teacher, going through that whole certification process while waiting for my bar exam results. So for those who don't have a lot of experience in legal setting, you study for the bar exam for maybe 12, 14 hours a day for about 2 months. And then you wait for about 2-3 months for your results. So during those 2 to 3 months, I studied to get my certification as a teacher. And then I received my license for both becoming an attorney and a teacher that first week of November. And that was November of 2016. And then I actually found an offer after spending a semester at Eastside Memorial High School, an offer for a high school law teacher. And just to tell you the power of having a law degree and having legal literacy in your toolkit, I was told that I didn't qualify for that job because I didn't have 3 years of experience as a licensed attorney. And because I knew how to interpret the law, because I knew how to advocate for myself, because when somebody says, the law says you're not allowed, I can actually go look and see, am I actually not allowed? Yeah. I was able to, annotate, highlight like a good, annoying attorney would do, send it back to the Texas Education Agency, and eventually, after quite a few emails, prove that I did belong in that role. And that's how I got started at Aikens High School, where that first legal aid clinic began.
I didn't know that. Maybe folks are catching that. You and I have had a number of conversations, as Ashoka and as you're coming through our fellow selection process, but this is something I hadn't heard. So I love that detail. One of the first things you did at Aiken was lead the mock trial team. And then quickly you launched what is now being called like the first legal clinic in the high school in the US, staffed by young people. There's a shorter way to say that, but maybe tell us that story, like this, and how did the legal clinics that you were leading in Aiken differ from the ones that you had experienced as part of the street law program in Houston, right? Like, what are the major differences that make this such a special contribution to our set of solutions in the country?
Definitely. So when I actually went to Aikens at first, during my interview, I asked them, I'm hoping to start a legal aid clinic here. And I expected some pushback, but we had some amazing leaders, including Brandy Hosick, Tina Salazar, Brett Lancaster, who gave it a full thumbs up. They were so into it. Like, we were going to help the community with their immigration processes. We were going to help draft wills. And, I expected them to be questioning it. They don't want to stir the pot, but they were in full support. And what happened was that we established a nonprofit. So the students actually worked on the filing of the registration of the nonprofit with the Texas Secretary of State. And then we had access to plenty of clients. One issue we never had at our high school legal aid clinic was finding clients. We had plenty on campus. It was our school custodians, our school security officers, our school teachers, the families of the folks that of students. And we had this amazing opportunity to help people who are now citizens because of the work of students, who are now green card holders because of the work of students, who have wills drafted because of the work of students. And that was just our direct work. That was exclusively our clinic and our students working with the employees of the campus. And I say that because we also had other partners I'll talk about in a second. But it's amazing because every time I go back to Aikens High School now, I am seeing the folks that we were able to help. And I'm remembering the students that were able to translate those documents and were able to sit down with these folks and provide culturally competent support in the language of choice of the client, which is so powerful because that's a huge barrier to access to legal support in this country. And it was a huge access to support at the law school legal aid clinics I worked with, because we had a few Spanish speakers and we had a whole lot of Spanish speaking clients. So what happened was that those few folks who could actually connect and communicate with their clients had such a burden. Not only did they have to handle their cases, but they had a line of us waiting right behind them to use their language skills to connect with the clients that we had. Right. And that was not the issue at our high school legal aid clinic. We had our students, competing for who would be the translator for this particular case because they really liked that security guard or they really liked that teacher. And that was really powerful. And then I do want to mention some of the other organizations that helped us provide direct services to the clients. We had folks come in and help us provide expunction support to people in our community. And we had the CAN Law Clinic come in and they helped us provide free end-of-life documents for terminally ill cancer patients, with our students serving as document reviewers, as witnesses, helping out with intake, which was a really powerful moment. We also had the Texas Law Aggie Society help us draft wills for 50 teachers at Aikens High School as well. And those numbers really add up. It's an expensive process to go through if you don't have free support. And then if you don't end up drafting a will, it can be even more expensive for your family down the line and far more stressful. So because of those students on our high school campus, all of this support was coming through, right? Not just because of our direct services, but also because of those partners who were helping our program. And, just one of the big reasons why we need to increase the empowerment of students is that it gives them a purpose and a reason to show up to school. Our students were showing up to school because somebody was counting on them. We had a client meeting and they were going to lead it. We had a client meeting and they needed to prepare the intake questions. They need to record the questions. After that was done, they were going to help draft it. And of course, I was there, or another attorney was there to provide a real thorough review.
Totally. I mean, and an attorney was there. These young people were operating under your license and doing really sophisticated, complicated, sensitive legal work. So I just am going to make that point a little bit more clear, because it's your trust in, your faith in, your belief in the power of young people, from the top of the call, the young people on the other side of the world, to the young people in your classroom. It's really beautiful. I just want to hold that. I guess we can go in a couple different places. You don't currently lead the clinics now. Like, there are other attorneys who now trust this model, right, and have young people operating under their licenses. Tell us what have been the sort of the, I don't know, evolutions, the steps that you've taken since launching this first legal clinic, and where, we'll get that far, and then we'll talk about where we go from there. So
our first goal was to expand this idea of the high school legal aid clinic, and that was going to be our model moving forward. And that's working at Aikens High School.
Around the city of Austin, or around
city and then state. We're going from Aikens to Austin to Texas. Beautiful. And that's happening at Aikens High School. They actually just received a big grant to do an expansive immigration clinic, an expansive wills clinic at Aikens High School, serving the broader Austin community. And we're going to be supporting their efforts that are now being led by attorney Carlos Garcia. And I will say that when I left, I was able to connect with an attorney with over 25 years of criminal defense experience, and he's now leading the program, and he's doing an amazing job. He also serves on our board. So I really appreciate what he does with the students, and I'm a big fan of what they continue to do at Aikens High School. And that model still exists, and it's showing that it's beyond, one group of students or one teacher. That can continue, and they're going to provide some very serious legal support this year. So when I left Aikens High School, it also happened to coincide with COVID. So this model of going into high schools, bringing people in from the outside into a campus where students weren't even allowed. I wasn't even allowed most of the time because I was a guest visitor.
Right.
Now bringing clients in to receive free legal support, that became a far greater challenge. Right. But during that time, we got to start thinking about what's the next step. Because I originally came into this role to think about how we can connect students who were sold the dream of becoming an attorney with the resources they needed to accomplish those goals. But the current model that I was working on would end at senior year of high school. And then once again, it would be, hey, you have this amazing experience, but once again, good luck. And hopefully you will become an attorney. And then maybe in 10 years, you'll get the same experience you had in high school when you're sitting in a law school classroom or legal aid clinic. So that's when the idea came about for our fellowship program. So not only do we get to work with Aikens High School, but we get to work with law pathways that do exist in a lot of school districts across Texas. And we get to find these students who are given these opportunities to be part of their community, learn about the legal process, gain valuable legal skills. And we get to go to their high schools, which is what we're doing right now in November. And we get to say, hey, if you're serious about becoming a lawyer and you're an aspiring first-gen lawyer, apply to our program. Tell us why you're passionate about the law. You don't have to be admitted to a four-year college or university. You don't have to have any special GPA. You don't have to have a certain SAT score, but you need to tell us why your voice is needed. And if you do that, we will support you with 4 years of training. So we pay them to learn how to work in a legal setting. We pay them to get an internship with a local judge. We pay for a internship with a local legal nonprofit based on their interests. It could be family law, it could be eviction defense, it could be immigration defense. And then finally, we help fund their LSAT course. So that kind of institutional knowledge that will be shared with them, that kind of training, that kind of skill set that they'll end up applying to law school with, that hopefully higher LSAT score they'll apply with, will give them access to schools and scholarships that will hopefully be a multiple of what we're receiving in terms of investment from law firms and foundations in those fellowships.
What I love about your work, it's T-shaped, if you will. I mean, there's this deep band that you just described where you're going to have a much more direct relationship with helping young people, as you say, like live into those dreams, those aspirations of being of studying the law. And in the process, a lot of folks are going to develop legal literacy, if that's a thing, you know, right? And just more of a grasp of what law can do if understood and used. And I think you've shared how so much of, like, if a school is lucky enough to have a legal course, a lot of the content will be a shock and awe criminal, you know, justice, sort of a criminal law, and that fails to address tenancy, immigration, you know, wage theft, and things that are really affecting a lot of young people and their families. So, is that accurate? And are you seeing impact in those two dimensions, with young people continuing on towards becoming licensed attorneys and having more access to legal literacy in general?
Yeah, that's essential, is what we're trying to spread legal knowledge about issues that are relevant but aren't covered. And it is that employment law. Where do you go to if somebody refuses to pay your wage because they say you're not an undocumented immigrant? Who do you go to if somebody says that you're responsible for all these upgrades to the apartment when they're trying to put their renovation costs on you as a tenant? Who do you refer that to? What happens if you are the survivor of domestic violence or sexual violence? Who do you go to? And those are some of the answers that we want to provide to students and connect them with folks who are working in those spaces. And the bigger picture there, something that you kind of brought up, is that what does it look like for us to fail in putting a student all the way through law school? It looks like a more legally literate individual who has knowledge about the legal tools and resources available to them.
Yeah.
And that's good for everybody. You know, our goal isn't to turn every single one of our students into an attorney. That would be pretty shocking result, would be very surprising. We'll support them as long as they want to go down that journey. But the bigger picture is that we also want to spread legal literacy and legal knowledge beyond the legal profession. And that's an unfortunate kind of separation between those who have a lot of legal knowledge and those who have no legal knowledge in our country, because we fail to invest in legal literacy. So what we're trying to do is kind of close that gap, right? We are going to help you become a first-generation lawyer. But if you're not, we still want you to have that toolkit. We still want you to know how to defend yourself, defend your family, and defend your community.
Beautiful. I think, because there's so much good that can happen just by helping, by forcing, by influencing the legal profession to become something other than the least diverse profession in the country. And so, just to be clear, your young people who go through this program, success could look like many things. They could be private practice. I've talked to some folks who do immigration for Major League Baseball, there are lots of different career paths. So public interest law isn't necessarily the only desired outcome of the young people who are getting the first gen lawyers that you're working with, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
We used to use this phrase that we want to turn courtrooms from a place of punishment to a place of power. And that's not just through licenses.
Right. Okay, awesome. So so this is where we're at today. 5 years from now, 10 years from now, what are we, paint a picture of what you're excited about, what's going to be more likely than today, thanks to you and your team, your collaborative efforts.
I like that. The more likely and the one I want. So the one I want is that we're investing a lot of time into our relationships with local bar associations, state bar associations, the American Bar Association, and kind of thinking about how we see diversity efforts. We want to switch how incentives work in the legal profession. Right now, you're incentivized to invest when you're guaranteed that somebody will become an attorney. Just get them in your firm. Have you increased the diversity of the legal profession? No, you haven't. You just moved that one person who made it through all the filters to your firm. So our big goal is that we can change that to supporting firms, to supporting law schools, to supporting bar associations that invest in folks before they are guaranteed to become lawyers. Invest in people that take risks, take a risk on people that can be a real difference maker, who can be the first lawyer in their family, who can become an advocate for their community. And that's not how our system works right now, right? Wait. If they're guaranteed to become a lawyer, just shift them to your place, get a diversity sticker. What we want to see is invest in that middle school student, invest in that high school student, invest in that college student before they're filtered out. Become the relationship that proves to them that they do have access and opportunities in the legal profession. And I try to make people think about STEM education.
Mm.
Like when it comes to STEM, we don't wait until somebody's in a PhD or Master of Engineering or Master of Biology program to start investing in women in STEM. That would be ridiculous. Like, no, nobody would support that, but that's what we do in the legal profession.
Right.
But what STEM does really well is that they've convinced folks that they are the only 21st century skill. We're also 21st century skills. Critical thinking is a 21st century skills. Communication is a 21st century skill. And we should be investing in our future lawyers as well. We should be investing in legal literacy as well. And we can do that with these amazing mock trial programs. We can do that with high school legal aid clinics. We can do that by connecting our students from Title I campuses with attorneys and judges so that they have a role model in the space, so they know who they can go to for advice. And that's the real difference we want to make. Now, more realistically, we're going to continue to see the same incentives at play for a while, which makes our fellowship program even more important, because we need to continue to support students at an earlier age and prove that they are either going to become attorneys or going to become non-lawyers with purpose and passion and legal knowledge and toolkits that will be helpful regardless of their professional outcomes.
Beautiful. I think we should shift to some of the questions from participants, but I mean, there's only so much we can pack into these 30 minutes. I will just note that, I mean, you're wearing a Youth Justice Alliance t-shirt. So you have, in your own evolution, you've moved from being in the classroom to being part of this nonprofit like accelerator incubator for not just the fellowship program, but for this spread, right? So that other schools can adopt this model. I know there's curriculum work that's being done in terms of how to support some of those shifts in the law curricula, right?
That's completely right. And that's what makes it so much fun right now. I miss being in the classroom, developing those long-term relationships, but now we get to travel around to different schools, different school districts, different cities, and connect with aspiring lawyers from all over the place. And we're opening up our fellowship to a broader region. I'm looking forward to connecting with El Paso and South Texas before our fellowship applications open up in the spring. So we're really trying to bring a lot more communities into the fold. And I'm really excited about who we have coming into our pipeline.
Awesome. Yeah, you're really excited. That's very clear. And it's fun to, connect with someone who's in a moment of just like loving their work and building beautiful things. So a couple quick questions. Claire loves the perspective that young people need agency in schools, and you give them a reason to come to school. High school-based legal clinics are a great example. Do you see this approach shifting other aspects of school environment, and how are schools and teachers embracing this perspective?
I do. It's kind of like the same idea as we call it in education, an authentic audience. Like you want something that's beyond a number. You want something that's beyond an A, B, or C on a document. You want something that they can hold and think back to, something that really tells them that school and learning is more than just a grade and a report card. And I do see folks adapting this. I see this in the way that they're serving their communities. They might be serving at retirement homes. They might be serving at hospice centers. But there are a lot of programs at high schools where students are given the chance to serve their communities. And I've never had a student tell me, oh, man, I wish I didn't come to school because we helped somebody, or I wish I didn't come to school because we helped the custodian get their green card. No, but there is a lot of, there are a lot of students who aren't incentivized by grades. So how do we get them passionate about coming to school? Give them purpose. Tell them that their presence is needed, not just for their own grades, but for the service of their community. And, it's kind of the community school model where you're interweaving the folks who are working in the community, the folks who are the families of the students, and the students themselves and the school all together in one big ecosystem that is serving and supporting itself. And that increases pride in the school, that increases the purpose of students. And I'm hoping it spreads, and I'm sure there are so many examples of it that I can't even think about right now. Yeah,
I mean, you're saying you're hoping it spreads, but then you're spending the majority of your days recently, right? Currently ensuring that it spreads. And this gets to one of the questions that Bhavika brings, which is, this is really amazing what you're bringing to youth in the community. We really want more and more people to know about this initiative and to benefit from it. How does your team maximize the reach? So just another line about, again, we have some folks are here live today, but there are other people who are going to hear about this because you're not going to leave it to chance. So how are you making sure other schools, administrators, bar associations know what you're up to?
So our big method is working through those associations because, as a new organization, our purpose is far larger than our budget. So if we connect with these larger organizations, we can connect with networks of attorneys of judges, of law students who can join us in our efforts. So that's a huge tool that we're utilizing. We actually have a continuing legal education course coming up on November 30th through the American Bar Association Young Lawyers Division that talks all about first-generation attorneys, talking about how we can support first-generation attorneys, support aspiring first-gen attorneys. So we're really trying to use opportunities like this to connect with folks who might be interested and passionate about this work. Definitely connect with us on Instagram, email, however you can connect with the Youth Justice Alliance. We're going to be a huge organization someday, but right now, no matter what you use, you'll end up talking to me. So I'm very excited to connect with y'all and figure out how we can bring this to your communities, how we can partner with your work, and hopefully spread, legal access and legal literacy to more communities.
That's like such a beautiful note to end on, but we just have a couple more questions, and I feel like we might just breeze past the 30-minute mark. 5 more minutes here. There's a theme in the last couple of questions from the audience, and then I have one. And the theme is essentially law school, that system doesn't allow for a lot of folks to graduate and do the work that you're doing, right? And we know that you've passed up bigger salaries and other opportunities, and have had a hard, to have a public interest law career is hard. And you're therefore able to inspire young people and high school students, maybe easier, one questioner asks, than law students to make these kinds of shifts toward the good of all, toward public interest law. How do you handle that? Like, how this is a system that doesn't allow, for folks to just not start paying back loans on day one, or it doesn't celebrate the sort of career choices you've made as much as it might, or as it could. And yet, like, here you are. So how do you respond to some of the pressure in the law sector, steering folks away from disrupting the status quo, right? And the kind of work you're doing.
All of that is true. And the biggest thing we try to talk about is the financials of law school as well. We speak about that with our high school students and our college students as well. We talk about, what it means to take on those loans. How do you pick between a law school that is higher ranked and will cost you $50,000 a year, and a law school that will cost you $10,000 a year, but it's, maybe tier 2 or tier 3 or substantially lower than the first one you got offered to. We also talk about the income that you'll get. Realistically, if you're a public interest attorney in the United States, you're making maybe somewhere about $60,000 to $80,000 per year. If you're working for some of the larger firms straight out of law school, you might be making somewhere like $200,000 per year, $250,000 after a bonus. So it's a drastic difference. And that's something we have to communicate to these students before they even apply to law school. Not everybody's going to have that $200,000 a year job. And I think when a lot of the students talk to us, they think every attorney is a millionaire, everybody's super rich, and everybody's thriving and has beautiful suits. No, there are a lot of people grinding for 5-figure jobs and working hard for their community. And if you want to go into that role, you need to understand what that's going to look like in terms of the loans that you take out. What is going to give you the opportunity to take on those jobs, to work in that setting that you're striving for, so that you don't end up having to take a job that you're not passionate about to satisfy those loans. And part of that is just the institutional knowledge of going through that process. So you can break down some of the assumptions about salary, breaking down some of the assumptions that you always have to go to the higher ranked school. You always have, if you're given an opportunity from the number 15 school and the number 80 school, obviously you're going to take 15, even if it's going to cost you $200,000 more. Wait, let's think about what that means long-term.
Right. And so you're such a good guide or navigator of the current system. I know, but you also look at the bigger policy environment, the bigger systems, and think about how we might shift those. So maybe as our final question, and we call it closing or not, but like, aside from helping young folks navigate the system with all of its flaws, are there any other policy opportunities or messages that are important to share?
I think a huge piece of what I would advocate for right now, and this might be a little bit off of our mission, but it's just when you're talking about schools, the schools that we work with are always labeled the bad schools. If you go to greatschools.org, they're the bad schools. They're the Title I schools. They're the undersupported schools. And, I'm constantly asked as a former teacher and attorney, would you send your kids to that school? Absolutely. Yes, I would. Because I know that I can offer them the support, and I know that they'll be around amazing students and amazing teachers who will support them. So really trying to break down this idea between good and bad schools is a huge part of our work. And that's why we work with schools that are underappreciated, underrated. When they're doing amazing work, the teachers are working in the community. They have great connections to the students, and they're busting their butts for those same students that are sometimes underappreciated themselves. So really trying to break that down. You can do that regardless of the profession you're in. That's about how you speak about the schools in your neighborhood. It's not bad schools or good schools. It's a lot of schools that are working very hard for their students.
Beautiful. Yeah, I think that feels like a good universal call to action. I know a lot of folks here have a heart for young people and for education, and to be as open and spot opportunities in all the places as you have. Seems like the least we can do. So, Armin, did I miss anything? Any final point you want to make? It's great seeing you again. Really wonderful work, and I'll just remind folks that you can follow along with your work and with some other Ashoka updates. Recording of this call will be shared. We'll make an article, a Q&A format as well. And then of course, this is Welcome Change. So every week we can meet back here and meet other social entrepreneurs. Thank you all for joining, and have a great rest of your day. Armin, we'll see you soon.
Everyone.
Appreciate you.